Item D, please.
Item 6D, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Fryer and Loretta, Inc. for design of the Spyglass Drive Storm Drain Improvements Project in an amount not to exceed $298,600 and appropriating $70,000 from the General Capital Reserve Fund.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Item in front of you tonight is to award the design contract for the Spyglass Drive Storm Drain Improvements Project. So the agenda for this presentation is very similar to the previous one that I provided. Provide a brief background on the project, then I'll provide an overview of the consultant selection, the criteria used to select a consultant. I'll discuss the scope of work, the schedule, and the budget, as well as the alternatives and recommendations. So let's start with the project location. So here's a map that shows the location of Spyglass Drive, which is indicated in the yellow oval. The Spyglass Drive neighborhood is located west of Skyline Boulevard and north of Sharp Park Road. The neighborhood can be accessed from the intersection of Sharp Park Road and Pacific Heights Boulevard. Here's another area that shows a close-up of Spyglass Drive and a portion of the storm system that's kind of indicated in green there. So the path of the storm drain system is depicted in green. The bottom arrow indicates the storm flow from the Pacific Heights neighborhood into a manhole that's located in Sharp Park Road. Then the storm pipeline conveys the water in a pipe between the two houses across the cul-de-sac and then between two other houses on the north side of Spyglass Drive. Then the storm system turns east and becomes an open discharge into a valley gutter, then heads valley gutter all the way behind these houses towards the Spyglass pump station at the end of the other cul-de-sac. Then eventually it discharges downhill. So as for the background, the city completed the storm master plan in 2014. The master plan evaluated the storm system and identified capacity-deficient pipelines and large box culverts for improvements. The improvement recommendations total about $20 million, which is in 2014 dollars. There's currently no dedicated funding source for these improvements at this moment. And then a portion of this Spyglass drainage areas was not included in the assessment of the storm master plan because it's an isolated area from the rest of the other city. So the storm flows from this, as I mentioned, from upstream of Spyglass Drive into the Spyglass neighborhood. Then it discharges towards the Pacific Ocean instead of towards the San Bruno Avenue, the channel behind 7th Avenue, like the other areas in the city. So during intense storm events, the storm system in Spyglass Drive overflows due to insufficient pipeline capacity to convey the flow. The properties adjacent to the storm system experienced multiple flooding over the years that included damage to the properties. So the picture on the right, on the bottom, was taken at one of the backyards of one of the property adjacent to the storm pipeline, and you can clearly see the level of water from the marking on the wall there. And in order to prevent flooding to the residential property, staff from Public Works install sandbags around the perimeter annually during late fall and then remove them in the spring. So here's just some pictures of the Sandbags installation around one of the properties. And here's a snapshot here of what's going on in that area. So snapshot is from a video across the street from the neighborhood, from that 1920 Spyglass Drive there. So it shows insufficient pipeline capacity at the location. The location where the water is overflowing is the drain inlet. The storm drain pipeline is located between those two properties that you see on the screen. So to select a consultant, staff issued RFP back in December of last year, and then we received 2 proposals. And these proposals were evaluated, with similar criteria that you saw in the previous presentation. That the project understanding regarding whether the firm understood the overall project scope, qualifications of the project manager and team, qualifications of the firm relating to their experience with evaluating and designing storm water conveyance systems, and then manpower allocations to make sure that the firm will complete the project effectively and efficiently. And then although the city is not required to consider costs again on this project, in the selection of the process, those were reviewed. The cost proposals range from about $262,000 to $300,000, and if all of the options were inclusive of the work. So based on the evaluation, staff is recommending to award the contract to Fryer and Loretta. The firm has completed similar design projects for the cities of Burlingame, Pacifica, San Francisco, Livermore, and Mountain View. As for the scope of work and schedule, the work includes assessing alternatives to mitigate flooding issues, then determining recommended alternatives, then proceeding with the design of the new storm facility. So the task includes, the site investigations, hydraulic modeling, and analysis to determine the flow rate and the storm conveyance system size needed, evaluation of alternatives to alleviate flooding, looking at a possibility of like a drainage basin or a pipe conveyance system, evaluating storm drain alignment alternatives, performing geotechnical work, and surveying, potholing, permitting, and CEQA as well, and corrosion design if needed, and completing of final design and preparation of bid documents as well. So, and providing construction supports at the end of the bid construction period. So, as for the project schedule, it's currently anticipated again for 10 months each for the design and construction. And for the fiscal impact, went one step too far. For the fiscal impact, the budget includes an appropriation of $300,000 in the project, and there's currently a carryover balance of $284,000 remaining. So the cost of this design contract is about $298,600, and staff is requesting an appropriation of about $70,000 to cover the design and anticipated costs for the project management. So staff understand that there's no dedicated funding source for the design or construction of the storm facilities and have looked for grant opportunities to fund this project. So back in October of 2017, we submitted an application to the California Office of Emergency Services as part of the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. We call it, they said FEMA DR 4305, to request funding for both the design and construction of these improvements. Staff followed up multiple times with staff from Cal OES and regarding the application, and was informed that the city application was on a waiting list. There were multiple staff turnovers at the grant administrator level at Cal OES. However, staff was able to get a hold of a representative and provided additional information to them back in October of last year. And the city has not heard back regarding the status of the application. And even if the city was awarded the grant, the city will still be required to provide a matching fund of 25% of the total grant amount. So here are the alternatives. If the city council chooses not to award the project tonight, and to the first is to defer the project, and as mentioned in the presentation, the area is prone to flooding, and staff will need to continue to set up sandbags on properties annually. And the second is to direct staff to choose a different design firm from the submitted proposals. Since then, the city received only 2 proposals from the RFP that was sent to multiple firms. Staff believe that we've selected a firm that is the best qualified to perform the work on this project. The third is to request the staff to issue a new RFP, and this would delay the project, and staff does not believe we'll receive any additional proposals since the first RFP resulted in 2 firms submitting the proposals. So therefore, staff is recommending the council to move forward with the project. Is to authorize the city managers to execute an agreement with Fryer and Loretta for the design of the Spyglass Drive Storm Drain Improvements Project, and also appropriating $70,000 from the General Capital Fund Reserve. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the director?
Through the chair, so is there any way we can continue trying to reach out for funding for the grant and then continue with the project in addition?
Yes. So I think it's actually better if there's shovel-ready projects that are in the works. So I think that's the approach that we're taking. Initially, when we applied for the grant, the project hasn't been designed. We had some preliminary layouts on some of the alternatives that we were looking at, but besides that, there's no other design documents.
And then I will say, I've been down there in times of heavy rains, and I know that staff's had to do a lot of work to actually really prevent a lot of damage, so great job to staff on that. But yeah, this is definitely a needed project, and the amount of cost and money and damage could greatly exceed with the number of the homes that are involved, so definitely thank you for the project.
Marty?
Yes, I'm in support of this project. It needs to get done. what I was going to ask is, in our design projects, should we start thinking about allowing a contingency so that when, for whatever good reason, it comes forward, that staff can proceed with getting the work done and not having to come back to council? Maybe a 10% contingency. That just wanted to share that with you.
Sure. So I think the challenge with this particular project and most of our projects is that the design is oftentimes less than the construction costs. And so we don't know the final solution here, but it is likely that the full construction cost will be $1.5 million or more. And so $300,000 just gets us to design. And so I think that's important to reiterate that this is a significant challenge where we do not have a dedicated stormwater funding system. And with the liability and the damage that's being caused to the homes, we have to proceed, and we've found a way to fund the $300,000 for design. And I just want to congratulate staff for doing everything they can to apply for grant funds. But it is not certain that we will receive state or federal grant funds for this project. And so if we do not, we will be returning to council likely with a fully designed project with a cost that could exceed $1.5 million, where we do not currently have the wherewithal to do that project in our stormwater fund. So we would be looking to unrestricted general fund reserves or some of our emergency reserves to do that. I hope it doesn't come to that point, but this is a significant issue that the community face where we frankly do not have the resources to fund the project.
Any other questions?
No, it's just sobering news, right? The whole room got quiet. All right.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then there's a request on resolution of the expenditure.
A motion to adopt a resolution to approve the funding for the Spyglass.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Melissa?
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor O'Connell? Aye. Mayor Medina?
Aye.